A DSCR refinance is a completely different transaction than a DSCR purchase loan. In this video, I'm going to cover everything that could come up during the process, what to look out for in underwriting, and when it makes sense to refinance and when it makes sense to hold off. To refinance with a DSCR loan, you do not already have to be in a DSCR loan. Many investors that I've worked with are already in conventional loans that they no longer qualify for because of debt to income ratio. With a DSCR loan, the lender and the underwriter is mainly concerned about the actual rental income coming in, how does that DSCR ratio look, and there's not going to be any personal income evaluation. There's really two main opportunities you have if you're looking to refinance with a DSCR loan. The most common route is a rate and term refinance. With a rate and term refinance, you're typically looking to lower your interest rate to bring down your monthly payment. You might be looking to change the term, go from a 30-year to a 15-year or vice versa. More commonly now, with how many people are in adjustable rate mortgages, you might be looking to modify your adjustable period into a 30-year fixed DSCR loan. Either way, you can think of a rate and term refinance as replacing your current loan with a brand new, oftentimes 30-year fixed DSCR loan. In addition to a rate and term refinance, you can always do a cash out refinance. A cash out refinance is going to replace your current loan with a higher loan balance. So you're essentially trading equity to be able to have cash and liquidity to pay off credit cards or higher interest debt, or to fund renovations or home improvement for a property, or even to come up with a down payment for a property that you're looking to purchase. I just had one client who took out 80% of the property's value with a DSCR cash out refinance, and he paid cash for a lower price point and didn't even have to get a loan. Typically, lenders will cap out at 75% loan to value or 80% loan to value for a cash out refinance. The no seasoning delayed financing cash out refinance has become extremely popular, at least with my past clients over the past few years. What this allows you to do is refinance right after you pay cash for an investment property. Why would you might want to do this? If you pay cash for a property, as you probably already know, you can often get a better deal. Your offer is going to rise to the top with less competition. You can waive contingencies, you can waive the appraisal, and you're not going to have to worry about the appraisal inspection, where the appraiser is going to pick apart the property and say this has to be repaired, this does not meet conventional financing or DSCR code. So you can pay cash for the property, get a better deal, rehab that property, and then do a cash out refinance, typically up to 75%, in some cases maybe up to 80% of that property's value. I'm helping a client refinance right now. He purchased 45 days ago cash, and we're going to use that new home value based off the appraisal to determine how much cash he can get out of the property. Now, when you do a refinance, cash out refinance, right after you pay cash for the property, the lender and the underwriter typically are going to want to make sure that you actually put in that amount of work into the property. They may ask for the scope of work, or they may ask for paid invoices from your contractor. Really, this has become an extremely popular option I've seen investors take advantage of. Lenders have really eased up on the guidelines. You used to have to wait minimum of 6 months or 3 months. Now I have dozens of clients who I've helped over the years who have done this delayed financing, cash out refinance within weeks or months after paying cash for that property. Depending on when you purchased your property and when you did your last loan, it's going to beg the question of, should I take out a HELOC or should I do a DSCR cash out refinance? They're both going to accomplish similar goals of giving you liquidity and cash back in your pocket, and they're going to do it in very different ways. With a HELOC, as you can see, you're tapping into the equity and leaving that first lien or first loan you have intact without paying it off. If you have a 2021 3.5 interest rate or 2.5 interest rate, obviously that's a rate that you're probably going to want to keep, and then that HELOC can make more and more sense. If you have an interest rate locked in above a 5.5% in the 6 range where rates are today, then doing a full-blown cash out refinance can make more and more sense. So depending on the interest rate that you already have locked in and what that HELOC interest rate is going to be that's offered to you, and calculating your blended rate can really help make that decision a little bit easier for you on whether it makes sense to do a HELOC or makes sense to take out a cash out refinance loan. Overall, there's many things to consider when refinancing to decide if it makes sense to hold off or if it makes sense to pursue the opportunity to refinance and move forward. If you're doing it for a rate and term refinance, again, we went over all the different reasons you might want to move forward. If it is to lower the interest rate, you really want to take a look to see if it does make sense. Calculate the recoup of all the closing costs divided by the monthly savings you're going to have to see if it makes sense. Generally, you want to be minimum 0.5% lower in rate for a DSCR refinance, but really 0.75% to 1%. That's when it starts to become more and more of a no-brainer. With the cash out refinance, you have very different goals in mind. So it's really just a motivation of getting that liquidity, and that can be enough for it to make sense for a DSCR cash out refinance. The most important thing to consider when qualifying for a DSCR refinance is asking the lender how exactly they're going to determine the DSCR ratio and what ratio they're looking for. The most common practice is the lender's going to look at a rolling 12 months if you have a short-term rental property, 12-month rolling period of all the income that's come in. If it is a long-term lease, they're going to look at that lease and then the last 3 months worth of deposits to make sure all the numbers add up. Some lenders that are more strict could ask for 6 months. Some that are more lenient might be okay with just documenting that lease plus the most recent month of rental income. If your lender is going to have a different variation, it's important to note whether you have short-term rental income or a long-term lease, and then ask your lender, do you require just the lease with a deposit, or is the lease with 3 months deposits or 6 months deposits? Making sure that you ask these questions up front will really help make the process that much more smooth and give you a much higher chance of getting loan approval. Again, my name is Austin Clarence. I'm your DSCR loan expert. Any questions you have about refinancing or to see whether it makes sense, please give me a ring, drop me a comment. Look forward to connecting.